Hey, my friends, welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Dark Roast, the podcast about dark coffee and even darker conversations. Today, we're going to be going into Ouija boards, a topic that, depending on who you talk with, is pretty diversive. People are going to say that it's either just a toy or that it's actually a way to communicate with either spirits or demons or something outside of this existence. I have personally never played with one. I know I had one growing up. So because of that, I'm going to bring in a friend of mine that I've known for going on close to 30 years, or well, not 30, 25, 26. Yeah, since high school. My friend, Ashley Brown. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. When you said 30 years, I was like, wait, are we that old?
Yeah, I skipped ahead about 10 years. No, it's been since probably about ninth grade, so 25-ish years or so, give or take.
Yeah.
And that 96, 97
yeah
period.
All right, so I mean, it's been a long time.
yeah. We'll leave it at that. So you said that you had at least one kind of weird experience with the Ouija board, so give me kind of the background on that.
Okay, so what got me to that point, though, is to understand that I started off as a spooky kid, I guess is what some people would say. I used to get babysat by my sister a lot, who was, she's about 15 years older than me, and she would babysit me at 6 years old and put on horror movies. As soon as my parents were out of the house, she'd pop in Hellraiser or Pumpkinhead, or something that you shouldn't be watching when you're 6 years old. But I loved it, and I became obsessed with horror movies, and I was like, oh man, this is really cool. I want to, demons are real, and dead people are, that's a thing, ghosts are a thing, and I got super into it, to the point where at a very young age, I would try to hold seances. I would try to communicate with Elvis Presley, and then Conway Twitty. At one point, I decided I was going to find Conway Twitty somewhere in the ether and have a conversation with him. I don't know why.
I would love to have a conversation with Conway Twitty.
It just seems fun, right?
Yeah.
But I grew up, I'm one of 10 siblings. So I have a lot of older brothers and sisters, and my older brothers are pranksters, basically. So we would hold these seances. I would go to a neighbor's house. Neighbors' parents always hated me because I'm trying to make their children communicate with the dead. So we would go over to the neighbor's house and hold these seances, and my brother would just mess with us endlessly. So, we would walk in the kitchen and all the cabinet doors would be open, or we would get really into it and have to be super quiet, and he'd jump over the couch and scare, a bunch of 9-year-olds, and we'd go running out to the street screaming. So I was like, I decided I wanted to up the ante, because I wanted to know if this, all these movies that I've been watching since I was 6, is this stuff real? Can I summon Pinhead from Hellraiser and have him, do whatever? So, which is really not a good thing for a small child to want to do, but whatever,
Yeah. Most kids at that age are looking to Barney. You're looking to, a Xenobite.
Right. So my heroes were different in my childhood, and that's fine. So eventually I was like, I wanted a Ouija board, and I begged my mom for a Ouija board. My parents were very religious, and they were like, absolutely not. That is the devil's tool. You can't have that in this house. Well, the same sister that introduced me to all the horror movies ended up buying me the Ouija board. Because at the time she had become really into the occult, and she was going to meetings with other witches, quote unquote witches, and they had a coven, and they would do rituals and stuff. It was nothing crazy. They weren't sacrificing goats or anything, but they were doing their little spells or whatever. And so she got me the Ouija board, and so this was probably around 6th or 7th grade that I got that. And during that time, she was also giving me books about witchcraft and stuff like that. So I was getting way super, super into it, to the point where actually in middle school, I got called into the principal's office because a parent at Merritt Brown called the school and said they were afraid I was going to kill their child with magic. which is not a thing that you can do, but I got in trouble for that in middle school.
Well, the joys of growing up in a very small Southern Bible Belt, super religious community like we did.
Right. And I really, like, I didn't know that there was anything wrong with anything that I was doing. I mean, there wasn't anything wrong with it, but in the eyes of authority figures in middle school, like, I was the devil. Like, how dare you even talk about witchcraft or demons or anything like that in middle school? Like, so I was already an outcast from a young age, and I was fine with that. But I didn't kill anyone's child. And I never found out who called, by the way. I have asked several people that we went to school with, and no one has ever admitted to it. But somebody's parent is a crazy person. Like, to think in middle school that another middle schooler is going to kill you with magic, that's just insanity.
Well, I was going to say, that long ago, it wasn't that big a deal. But these days, I mean, you have the 14 and 13-year-old girl that tried to kill their friend because Slender Man told them to do it. You know, it's crazy.
I just watched an episode of Bailey Sarian's Murder, Mystery, and Makeup on that the other day, actually. I don't know if you're familiar with that YouTube show, but yeah, I just watched that. Still into spooky stuff, if you haven't noticed.
No, not a little, not even a little.
Anyways. So I get the Ouija board, you know, and at first it's just like me, and I have a sister that's only like a year and 3 months older than me. And first it was just the two of us and nothing was really happening. And then every once in a while, like, a friend would come over. And of course, as soon as another person came over, I'm like, we have to contact the dead. Like, let's get the Ouija board out and start doing that. And so I still don't know who started it, but, you know, we would pull it out and nothing would happen. And then sometimes we would pull it out and it would move. No one would ever admit to moving it, but it would move. And we're like, okay, well, that's weird. And it got to the point where we were playing it so often that different members of my family started getting involved, like the older brothers and sisters, and then eventually my mom. And it was the summer between either the 6th and 7th or the 7th and 8th grade. I'm not really sure which one, but it got to the point where the entire family would be around the kitchen table, candles lit, lights off. My mom would be taking notes while we were on the Ouija board, contacting what we believed to be a demon who identified himself as Zamo. Which is a ridiculous name, which also makes me think that someone in my family came up with that, because that doesn't even sound like a demon's name. Like, no. That's just, you were just moving that thing around on the board. But anyways, apparently, so we contacted Zamo, and Zamo was he was human at one point, he said, and he had gone to hell and got, like, what promoted to demon because he had murdered his wife. The story was that we were told through the Ouija board is that he caught his wife cheating on him with his best friend, and in in a moment of passion murdered his wife and chopped her head off and threw her head in a lake and left her body on the shore, and they never found her head. And so he got promoted to demon from, like, I guess, regular member of hell. I don't know how that works. Because what he did wasn't that evil. It was like a revenge. Right. So it's I mean, if you're gonna get promoted in hell, you know, that's a pretty big one, I guess. But we would sit around and we would ask him all kinds of crazy questions, and sometimes that thing, it would just be like going so fast that I'm like, there's no way someone's brain could move fast enough to make this up, you know. But you know, I'm sure it was older brothers, again, tricksters. And there was at least, there's 2 brothers, 2 sisters, 2 brothers, 3 sisters, and my mom were all involved in this at that point in time.
And were you the youngest, or where were you in that scheme?
Yeah, I was the baby.
Okay.
But I'm the one facilitating all this, or like making everyone do this. But they all got really into it. So, yeah, I was probably 12 or 13 at the time. But yeah, so I remember, like, one night though, we were doing, this is the last time we ever did it. One night we were doing it, and the thing was moving like crazy, and we were asking all kinds of questions. And then all of a sudden started blowing crazy wind outside, lightning strikes, power went out. And this was like, my mom just got super, super freaked out. And she was like, because she was super religious, and she's all of a sudden involved in this occult thing, you know? And so she was just like, we can't do this anymore. We can't do this anymore. We have to burn that. And so the next day she made us go outside and set the Ouija board on fire and watch it burn. And then she started going back to church that weekend. She never did anything like with the occult ever again. It freaked her out so bad. So yeah, I wasn't really allowed to do things like that anymore. So it was like I was doing it kind of, you know, without her knowledge at that point. But I started to lose interest in it because I was getting, you know, that teenager age where I was getting out of fantasy land and, you know, becoming obsessed with boys and things like that. So that was kind of the end of it for all of us. But yeah, that's my anticlimactic Ouija board story.
Well, I don't know that I would say it's anticlimactic. I mean, that's a pretty good ending. You're sitting there and then all of a sudden a storm comes in. And growing up where we did, those storms can come in super fast and super hard. I feel like if I was playing on a Ouija board and that happened, it would freak me right out too, though.
Yeah. And actually, a fun fact, so we set the Ouija board on fire, and then she made us bury it in the yard because my sister that was like super into witchcraft said you have to bury it to, like, I don't know, something about keeping the demon in the ground. She was crazy. She's still crazy. So we buried the Ouija board in the yard and like 3 years later, maybe 4, doesn't matter. I was in high school, like probably a junior or senior at this point. I decided I'm going to dig up the Ouija board because I think it would be cool at this point because it's been burned and it's been buried. It probably looks really neat, you know, at this. So I dug where I remembered that we buried it and could not find it. So it has disappeared into the ether, or I just couldn't remember where it was buried. But I really looked for that thing and could not find it. So like, even though I'm a skeptic and I don't believe in ghosts, I don't believe in demons, I don't believe in any of that. And that's always freaked me out a little bit that I couldn't find it when I went to look for it. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe the rain washed it away.
Well, and depending on how badly it was burned and then burying it, you know, there's always the chance that even over 3 to 4 years, because they're only made of cardboard, that's something that easily could have, you know, right, dissolved away. What about the planchette, the little plastic piece that does the marking of the letters? What did you guys do with that?
I did keep that for a long time. Actually, she did let me keep that. It was only the board that she made us burn because I was like, that's plastic. That's not going to burn anyways. So I had that in my bedroom as like a decoration. Gotcha. And I don't know what's happened to it since then. It's probably in the garbage.
Probably. It's funny how the stuff you cherish as a kid and like that you're really into just kind of gets tossed to the wayside the older you get. Kind of like what you were saying about you know, back then you fully believed in this stuff and you were into it, and then now you're kind of a skeptic about it.
Yeah. And I think at one point, I mean, I wanted to know if any of this was real. So at one point I did try, I was like, I'm going to contact Satan and sell my soul for something cool. And I did like the seance thing, and no one ever came to collect my soul. I never got anything cool. And I was like, see, I think this is all kind of horseshit.
Well, sorry. I'm just imagining the 15, 16-year-old Ashley that I knew growing up, like sitting around with candles, sitting there waiting, and then getting irritated, like smoking a cigarette, getting pissed off that no one's showing up to offer you something cool for your soul. Because that's the Ashley that I grew up with that I remember.
Right. Right? Like, where is my cool thing? I want magic powers. I was told that if I lit a candle and I summoned Satan, he would come. I could sell my soul and I'd get something cool for it, and nothing has happened. I was very angry.
Yeah. I'm still in Panama City. I still have no magic. I still have no cool car. The fuck, Satan? Come on.
Right. I mean, like, I'd already been in trouble with the principal. Like, I had done something wrong. So I was like, might as well.
Yeah. See how far you can push it. So,
yeah,
you know, so it's funny that you got this as a kid, as a toy, because originally it was created as kind of like a toy and like a parlor game that people would play. Um, it started by a guy named Elijah Bond in 1891. He actually got the first patent on it, and it was I think they called it like the talking board, and it was basically kind of what we know now, where it was just a board with letters, yes and no, hello, goodbye, and then had the planchette that you would use to go it around. And then in 1901, I guess he gave the company or sold the company to an employee of his named William Fold, and he's the one that named it Ouija. And there's a couple different things. Some people say it's an ancient Egyptian word for like hello or something or goodbye. Um, but Fold said that it was a cross between the French and German words for yes, and that's where we get Ouija. So it was marketed as like a toy, just a game, a board game that you could play with people. There was nothing really to it until about World War One, when all the occultists started getting into it and using it as a way to contact and reach out to, the spirits, to the ether, to whatever. And I just always think it's really fun that, this toy, this game basically has now become like almost like a centerpiece for like horror movies, horror stories. Like, how many YouTube videos are there out there where people are playing with the Ouija board, and then the planchette will start going crazy, or they'll get weird, crazy answers and freak out and throw it and burn the board and run away.
Yeah. It's funny actually, because I have a child of my own now. He's not a child anymore, he's an adult, but he has a Ouija board, and and I thought about bringing it over here and be like, look, but yeah, and I bought it for him recently because he told me he's now really into stuff like that. Like he's got crystals all over his apartment, and he's got tarot cards, and he wanted the Ouija board, and he's got this game called Psychic Circle. And I'm like, and at first I was like kind of poking fun at him because he was into that stuff, and I was like, it's none of that's real, blah 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 blah. And then I had to like take a step back and be like, wait, I used to do the same thing. You have to play around with stuff like that, and it's fun to find, like, even if you don't believe in magic, let people believe in magic because they want to believe in magic, and have that fun, and have that, because it was fun, it was interesting, even if it was all made up, or if it was one of my brothers doing that or whatever. It was still a good time. So I have a family memory from it, which I guess is important.
Yeah, you guys got together as a family, and even though you were doing something that was, occult, or not acceptable for where
not
we
what
lived.
Normal families do on the weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm lucky we didn't get run out of town with pitchforks. I really was putting my family in danger by being interested in all of these things. I did get the police called on me once too for my weird beliefs. All those witchcraft books, I let a friend borrow them, and his mom found them in his room, another very religious mother, and she freaked out and called the police. And the Lynn Haven Police Department kept my books and would not give them back.
Wow. That's okay. So that should just show you guys right then and there how small a town it was that we grew up, that the police department was called because someone gave someone else religious texts about witchcraft, which is not satanic, it's not evil, it's witchcraft. It's just another process of belief. And they kept the books and went and harassed like a 14, 15-year-old girl.
Yeah. Fun time.
Yeah. You were more in danger from your neighbors and people in the neighborhood than you were from playing with the Ouija board. From anything that you might have summoned from Absolutely. That, you were more in danger.
Satan never showed up, but the cops did.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. Oh yeah. It's funny because I grew up and my sister had one, and I remember her playing with it a couple of times, but I don't think I ever played with it. And I was like you, I grew up watching horror movies, reading horror novels, reading books galore, anything that had horror, zombies, werewolves, vampires, anything in it, I was watching and enjoying it. Especially, you mentioned two of my favorites, Hellraiser and Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead is still one of my favorite horror movies of all time to this day. But I never played with
Nice.
the Ouija board. Like I think like I thought about it once or twice, but there was either no one else with me, or I was just like, yeah, I'll pass for now. And I'd almost be interested to try again, but at the same time, like I don't know, like because I'm weird about things now. Like I'm skeptical about certain things, but then I also think that you can also give things power just by putting a little bit of your own belief into it, whether they actually have power or not. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I think the
No,
older I
no,
get,
that totally does. That totally makes sense.
just like I'm sorry, I'm drinking my coffee. I'm giving my coffee power over me because I believe so much in its dark, delicious goodness. So, so
I
did you guys ever have anything like outside of your brothers messing with you and the storm? Did you guys ever have anything weird at all happen while you were using the Ouija board, or maybe just prior to or just after finishing a session?
Other than the storm, the power did go out once while we were using it. But I attributed that also to living in a rural area. And, anytime that the weather got bad, the power would go out. But so that did happen once, and that freaked us out a lot. Now, also one time we were trying to use it, and every time we would ask a question, it would just go to goodbye. And then the I forget what it's called, but it flew off the table, and still no one has admitted to making that happen. But in my head, I'm like, you definitely made that fly off the table. Like you pushed it too hard. But so that, there were some instances that made me go, no, this is real. This is a thing, which like further pushed me into fantasy land there for a while until like I said, boys happened and puberty happened. And then I was like, I'm all done. I'm all done with fantasy. I'm going to go do all that now,
Yeah,
which was the worst mistake. I should have just stayed in
you
fantasy
should have stayed
land.
with the fantasy. Huh?
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I love that at the time you were kind of into it, but also still skeptical. And now, as an adult, you're very skeptical about it, and so you don't believe at all that it was anything that you guys contacted. You're almost 100%, even though none of them will admit to it. You're pretty sure it was either your brothers or another family member that was doing it.
Yeah, I mean, like I would like to believe it, but I feel like the amount of time that I've spent trying to contact the other side, or, some other entity besides, what we can see and feel and hear. Like I spent a lot of my youth trying really hard because I wanted so badly to believe. And so there were weird instances in my childhood with other family members, so that's just anecdotal evidence. But like both my parents swear that an alien spaceship landed in our yard once when I think I was 7. They, up until the day he died, which was recently, my dad swore that happened and that they saw it. And so but aliens I don't really put in the same category as supernatural. I think that there's a good probability that alien life exists because the universe is infinite. But I mean, not to get all weird, but if you believe in like the multiverse theory, there could be ghosts, there could be demons, because everything exists and every eventuality exists on every timeline. So maybe.
And maybe all a ghost or a demon or an entity like that is just bleed over from one of those alternate dimensions, which is why it doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
And it's usually only in very specific places, maybe where the veil, I put that in quotations, the veil between the worlds is thin, and so you get these stories of ghosts and goblins and everything else. So
Yes. So I will say that while I don't believe it in like the religious sense, like the way that it's framed in our society now, like I don't think that there's a Christian hell with a demon named Zamo who lives in hell, who is doing, who killed his wife and he got promoted. He got a better job in hell. I don't think that happened. But I think that the possibility is there. I will say that.
okay. Well, that's really cool, and I really want to say thank you for coming on and talking to me about this. I know that you don't look at it as a paranormal experience, but I know that there are other people who have had experiences with it. So it's kind of fun to have someone who's a skeptic about it come on and tell a story and be able to look at it from a different perspective instead of saying, oh, it was this demon, saying no, it was probably my family fucking with me. So
Yeah. Well, thanks for inviting me on and letting me tell my story that I had completely forgot about until you were like, hey, have you ever had anything? And at first I was like, no. And then I was like, wait a minute. I mean, just because I don't believe anymore, it doesn't mean that nothing ever happened that would be worthy of telling. So
no, that's, like I said, I appreciate it because I've never had any experiences that I could consider one way or the other. And I've always been interested in this stuff, which, you know, is the reason I started this podcast. I want to just talk with people about the experiences they've had. So it's good to hear someone that maybe believed in it at the time, but is now a skeptic, but is able to talk about it and, you know, be real open about it and, you know, not be able to say it was one or the other, but this is just the experience I had.
right.
So, all right, dear. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. And again, thank you very much for coming on the show with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Again, remember, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify, Google Podcast under Tales from the Dark Roast. Please leave us a like, a comment. You know what, on YouTube, if you're listening to this on YouTube, leave a comment below. Have you ever had any Ouija board experiences or anything that you couldn't explain while playing with one of them? Let us know. Leave us a like and review. And remember, guys, keep your mugs full and your stories dark because I want to hear them.